What's going on, guys? Bel Air here. Getting over a little bit of a sickness, so hopefully you can't hear the nasaliness in my voice. Nasaliness, is that a word? Anyways, Birmingham Major Randomizer. This is always one of my favorite things to do after each of our majors, which is take our 48 players from our 16 teams and say, hey, what if we just had like a pickup tournament style randomizer? We put all 48 of our guys on 16 new teams. And in the past, this has just been kind of a hypothetical, but this time around, shout out to Cody on Twitter. I reached out and said, hey man, you always do these prediction sheets. How can I do this? And Cody was incredibly kind with his time, helped me figure out how to make 16 new orgs with our different players. And we're going to run through this. And one other thing here is that not only are they randomized, and like, you know, you guys can check in the description below if you want to do this yourself, of course, but one of the things that I'm bringing as a value add is that I took extensive notes. So for for each of these matchups that we have all the way through the entire tournament, with each one, I'm going to give you guys a fun fact or a stat from how these players performed at Birmingham. So not only is this entertainment, but also you're learning. How exciting is that? Ground rules as we get into this. Imperfect science. You know, a lot of this is just like personal opinion, of course. But also I'm trying to factor in not only how well these teams would mesh as a unit and kind of what I foresee and project they would be able to do, but also it's kind of based on how they performed at Birmingham. A little bit, not always. Sometimes I'll do it more than others. All right, caveat aside, let's meet our teams. Why don't we? We're starting out with a banger matchup in round one. Reaper Esports, which is BeastMode, LJ, and oaly. What a squad, going up against ArcTiiK Gaming here on the other side. ExoTiiK, AtomiK with a K, and Yan. Two excellent teams. Could definitely see both of these winning the whole thing. So we're very fortunate to get this as a first round matchup. You don't get a lot of these. But also the fun thing and the really challenging thing about this exercise is that it makes every single one of these incredibly difficult to do. In this one, we're going to have ArcTiiK starting off hot with a game 5 win over Reaper Esports here. Look, ArcTiiK are high flyers. Yan is our most time in the high air, or one of the top ones out of this whole event. And AtomiK with a K actually had the highest tally, which is goals plus assists. He had the highest amount in Birmingham, 1.8 per game, which is incredible. Yan was a great passer. We know him as a scorer, but he actually had more assists overall in this tournament than he did, more assists than he did goals, excuse me. Beast mode ceiling defense is the thing to look out for here. Reaper's speed and counterattacks is what I'm looking at here. LJ, of course, was excellent with ultimates as a counterattacking unit. NRG with beast mode, they had the best defense or allowed the least goals per game, but at the same time had one of the least goals per game. So both of these are just looking to strike out and find opportunities here. But ultimately, I just think that the firepower from ArcTiiK is going to overpower them. Let's move on to Big Yeti Esports, Majicbear, Sphinx, and Joreuz against V Formation, Fever, Monkey Moon, and Joyo. Another really fun matchup. I'm going to go 3-1 here to V Formation. Big Yeti. This is a low shooting affair for both teams. Neither of these rosters, I actually went through and I calculated the individual performances and then I averaged them out onto like what these new teams would be. An imperfect science, but hey, it's a little fun. And neither of these teams are getting up a lot of shots respectively here. Monkey Moon, top 4 in distance to the ball and to his teammates. So Monkey Moon is just always around the play, making big stuff happen. And I feel like him playing off of Joyo, this is a great situation for Joyo to be in. Just really getting a lot of facilitated stuff to himself. We saw how great he was mechanically over the course of Birmingham. Ultimately, they fell short of what they wanted to do, but hey, they still were a top 8 team here. And I just feel like this is a team that is going to find a way over this big Yeti team, which has a lot of really exciting talent on it. Sphinx and Joreuz, I felt like both had excellent results for their teams, and that's not to say that Majicbear did not. All right, let's go down to look at this one. We'll call this the Derby. Why don't we? The two horse teams. I didn't know that I was such a big fan of horses. Surprise to me, but I made two of the 16 organizations horses. Prizehorse GG here. Rise, Archie, and TRK. That's a nasty team right there. Going up against the Stallions. Retals, dralii, and TORRES. And we talked beforehand about, can I envision these teams? It's actually funny where this is a situation where I can totally envision the Stallions, where Retals and TORRES are both top 6 in demos per game. And you're just making a ton of space for dralii. You're just opening up the field to see how often he can melt the defense. And on the other side, this Prizehorse team, so much overall talent, but it's tough for me to understand what they're trying to do here. I guess like Archie is the player out of these that is the most goals per game. He was one of 6 players who was over a goal per game, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't really understand how they're gonna find it on the field. Like it's not as clear cut as some of our other teams. But despite that, I'm gonna give the edge to Prizehorse because Retals and TORRES obviously are looking to open up space here, but TRK, an event low 0.69 demos taken per game. So they're going to be looking for it, but they're not going to be able to find TRK. He's going to shut it down on the back end. And I just feel like Prizehorse are going to be able to overwhelm the Stallions on the offensive end. All right, Team Shuriken, Reysbull, Lostt, and Reysbull. What a strong defensive unit, huh? Going up against Vision Quest, which is Kiileerrz, Leoro, and Atau. Defensive brick wall here from Team Shuriken. Lostt and Reysbull were 1st and 3rd in saves per goal allowed. So very, very stingy. And that's not even to mention Reysbull, who I think is one of the best defensive players in the world. So despite this 1-2 punch here from Atau and Kiileerrz, I just don't know if they're going to be able to score enough. Atau's probably your first man, going back to like Carmine Core of last season or even back to the Team Liquid days. And him and Kiileerrz, super dangerous. They're going to want to keep a very high pace. And I just don't know if Leoro is going to be able to hang with that. He's a pretty slow player, pretty low average speed over the course of this event. And I felt like Lostt, especially, excellent Birmingham major. I have Shuriken 3-1 over Vision Quest, Cardinal Gaming, Vatira, AppJack, Cheese. What a roster. Going up against Dragonfire, Reysbull, Naupo, Drafinio. Dragonfire, another team that I really struggle to like understand how they're going to come together here. Look, this Cardinal Gaming team was, when I put this out yesterday on Twitter, was a team that we got a lot of buzz for. A lot of people were looking at this as one of the favorites. I can kind of see it. I really can. And on the other side with this Dragonfire, again, like Naupo and Reysbull were taking a ton of shots over the course of this event. Of course, one of those is a more impactful striker in Naupo than Reysbull is. But with that being said, like, what is Drafinio to this team? Is he the glue like he kind of is for Furia now? Or is he rolling back the clock and being more of an offensive presence like he was with Crew back in the day with Brad and Drops? I just don't know. And again, like AppJack and Vatira, a ton of experience, especially major experience. They know how to win. This is going to be a team that has great comms. Naupo, #1 in time spent supersonic, but Jack is 4th. So it's not like they're going to be totally outsped here. Reysbull and Naupo are very grounded, and I think ultimately Vatira's attacks as a solo man in the air is going to be the difference here. So I'm going to give the edge to Cardinal Gaming. Next, we have Paladin, Fiberr, Chronic, and Zen, and it's stylized as like Paladin, like all uppercase, like that. And let me not ruin the, yeah, let me get that back there. Um, PALADIN, great, great orb. Like who was the one who designed this logo? Somebody out there needs to be getting paid a little more. Going up against Banana Boys, which is Banana Head, Mata, and VK Salen. Look, it's inevitable. Like this is a tough and fun exercise because of how well balanced a lot of these teams are. It just so happens that some teams have more talent than others. And I feel like this Banana Boys team, Banana Head got his counting stats, but I was a little underwhelmed by his overall Birmingham performance. And the same goes for Mata, despite being second in goal participation for this event behind Yan or First Killer. Excuse me for not recalling which, although I'm almost certain it's Yan here. Despite that, I just think that this team is going to struggle against PALADIN. And this is another team that I know exactly what they look like here. Chronic as your anchor, exactly what he's doing for ultimates. Zen as your kind of do it all on both ends of the pitch, but a huge offensive presence. And then Fiberr getting the opportunity to be a secondary striker alongside Zen. I think that's a pretty good roster there. Wolfpack Gaming here going up against the 3 Eagles. TORRES, swiftt, and Catalysm. And then Wolfpack, of course, is First Killer, AtomiK, and Hunter. First Killer and AtomiK both make top 4s. They have that NA connective tissue. Hunter is asked to do a lot less here, going back to his performances last season where he's just a facilitator, man, you know? I am ultimately going to give the edge here to Wolfpack, just because this is also a debut for TORRES, who looked impressive for FUT, and swiftt, who was one of the players I was most excited for coming into Birmingham. It's, you know, an opening series for them. Round 1, they got to shake off, you know, some of the jitters that come with your debuts, and Catalysm has been to a major before, a couple seasons back with Evil Geniuses, but it's been a minute since he's been here. So I think this is going to be a great warm up here for Wolfpack. And, you know, 3 Eagles are going to have to settle into this event here. And finally, the Saltwater Strikers, Sosa, CRR, and Daniel going up against Evergreen Esports, KV1, Diaz, and Stizzy. And honestly, I really like both of these teams. The fun thing about this exercise, again, is just getting to see all of these and being like, ooh, you know, that would be an interesting team to watch here. Evergreen, second in shots per game when I took their individual tallies and averaged them out for this exercise, which surprised me. I don't really look at this as a team who would be taking a lot of shots, but I guess, you know, Diaz and Stizzy were doing a lot of heavy lifting for Complexity and Dignitas, respectively there. They're second only behind Prizehorse, our team up here with Rise, Archie, and TRK, who were just lighting the world on fire. And then on the other side of things, Saltwater Strikers actually averaged out to 16th in goals per game, despite CRR having a great event, Sosa and Luminosity going all the way to round 5, and Daniel making a top 4. Daniel did not have a very impressive goal scoring event here. It's probably, if you averaged out all of his majors, this is on the lower end in my opinion. So I'm going to give the edge to Evergreen. Early dark horses here. We know that this isn't going to go fully chalked. So despite the talent on this team, Evergreen are going to pop out here. Let me go to my second page. Again, guys, I took notes for every matchup here, so I'm trying to give you guys bang for your buck. All right, let's get into our second round. Let's start out with Stallions. We're going down here. Stallions against Saltwater Strikers. Sosa and Hunter, both top 4 in amount of time grounded. So this is not a team that is getting up into the air, which is something that gives me pause, especially with Retals and TORRES trying to get so many demos. I feel like if you play a really grounded style, you're easier to demo, and especially with dralii doing everything he's doing in the air. I'm just nervous about this matchup for Saltwater defensively. Also, Sosa, slowest average player from Birmingham. I just think demos are going to pour in here. But CRR, great at breaking out in transition. I think that's going to be a difference maker for me here. And of course, we can't shy away from how great Daniel is defensively. But I think Stallions here are going to come out and get a big commanding win, especially after they played Prizehorse so close in the opener here. And I think these are just going to be very different stylistic matchups between Evergreen and Stallions here for Saltwater. And I think that dichotomy is going to be something that they struggle with. All right, Vision Quest going up against 3 Eagles. Catalysm, one of 5 players to average over a goal per game from Birmingham. TORRES, honestly, I thought was the most solid player from FUT, like we talked about before, 60% goal participation. But ultimately, I just think Atow and Kiileerrz are going to be too much for this roster to handle. I think that they're going to score with ease, and despite 3 Eagles and what I think that they could be able to do in some of these matchups, again, swiftt, a player that I'm really, really excited about. I just think that Kiileerrz Atow combination, especially with the quality of play that we saw from Atow from Birmingham, is going to be too much for the Eagles to hang with here. All right, Dragonfire going up against a big Yeti. Joreuz and Sphinx. I felt like they overperformed my expectations. We talked about that in round 1. Day 1, Joreuz was excellent, and Sphinx was the leader of the team, getting luminosity to round 5. But another thing here is Jack had put out a YouTube video kind of recapping the event, and he talked about Drafinio just killed them. He was saving everything, and then you have Naupo as well. I just think that Dragonfire are going to inch out a win here, despite, like, if this were a real event, this big Yeti team I'd secretly be like a big fan of. I love that Majicbear, Sphinx, and Joreuz roster, but despite that, Dragonfire here, Naupo is not to be denied, and they're going to eke out a close one. All right, Reapers going up against the Banana Boys. BeastMode underperformed. He shot 22 for 104, which is 21% shooting here. Despite that, LJ was excellent. I felt like oaly was instrumental in GK getting into the top 8. His speed, his striking ability, I just feel like they are going to wear down and find excellent spots, especially LJ. Not only impressed with what he was able to do offensively, and somehow always rises to the occasion at these LAN events. Another impressive finish for him here, making it all the way to the grand finals with ultimates, but also his ability not just to get demos, but to get huge bumps. Like, I remember in that game 7 in the semifinals against NRG, it was a 1-0 win by ultimates, and the thing that put Reapers over the edge, well, ultimates, but LJ over the edge in that matchup, was LJ got a huge bump on beast mode to knock him out of the goal, and First Killer just walked one in with 14 seconds left. So I feel like they're going to give this Banana Boys squad fits, and I think this is going to be another 3-0 here. Banana Boys struggling early, especially to shore things up on the defensive end. All right, let's move up to our 1-0 matchups here. Let's start at the bottom. Arctic Gaming going up against PALADIN. ExoTiiK and Yan both went 3-0 in Swiss. PALADIN are coming off of a big round 1. They're warmed up here against Arctic. They have the momentum, but despite that, I just think that we're going to give the edge to Arctic Gaming here. They came off of a big win against Reapers in round 1. And, this is a huge difference in approach from what PALADIN were going up against to what they're going to be facing here. Much more grounded team, great strikers. VK Salen looking to facilitate to his teammates. Mata and Banana Head pretty grounded, just trying to play like a solid series. And then you come over here, and this is going to be a high-flying, fast matchup. And I think Fiberr is a player who I have circled as somebody who can struggle defensively and find himself flat-footed sometimes. I just think that this Arctic Gaming squad are on a roll here early. And again, players who always do excellent in Swiss, especially with ExoTiiK and Yan. All right, Cardinal. Cardinal Gaming going up against V Formation. what is this Cardinal Gaming? Is this like a big transition team, or is this like a half court set kind of team where they're trying to sustain offense? Because Cheese is a player who can get out there, and we love how great he is at getting those like hit ahead skims, which put the defense on their heels. Um, Also, Jack is great at getting out in transition, but Vatira can do both. I just don't really know what they're trying to do as a striking team. Offensively, Fever and Jack, top 6 in small steals. So this is a situation where if you're trying to play the half court sets, that boost battle might be something that makes the difference here. And can the Cardinals trap V formation in their own end? Especially if they're getting some of those, big steals. Like Cheese and Jack are great at getting big steals. We're going to talk about that statistic here a little bit later. But if they can keep, especially Joyo, off of the big boost and make him kind of clamor, I feel like they might have just the ability to find easier offense than V formation. I'm going to give them the edge. Shuriken going up against Wolfpack. Excuse me, close one, but Hunter oftentimes flat-footed in goal, especially as the third. Shuriken are all great at fakes. We of course had Lostt getting a couple huge ones where he broke, what was that, Rise's axles when they went up against Twisted Minds. And then he had that kind of fake in transition. Was it against Zen where he ends up like, he like goes up like he's gonna hit it, but then he wave dashes down, ends up backwards, flips it in. Like Lostt was all over it. And I think ultimately that's going to be the difference maker here. Strong defense, of course, on the other end, and just that ability to get big wins in transition on the goal line, I think is going to make all the difference here. And then Prizehorse going up against Evergreen. Prizehorse, like we talked about in the first one, are scoring by committee. Archie led GK in goals, but is he the primary striker here? I really don't think that it matters. I think this team has so much talent. They're going to figure it out. Rise and TRK are not going to be afraid of the players on the other end. And KV1 is somebody who sometimes struggles at these majors to rise to the occasion, something that we saw with Team Secret. I'm going to go 3-1 to Prizehorse here. What are you guys thinking so far? I'm feeling pretty good about it. All right, let's hop over to our round 3 notes. Belair, you didn't bring any water for this, even though you're coming off of a sickness and you're going to be talking for a long time. What are you doing, man? Guys, I was just excited to get this content to you. All right, where are we starting out here with the notes? We're going to start with up top in the 2-0, Arctic going up against Prizehorse here. Look, a great matchup. Like, this is one that would be appointment viewing for me. So much talent here on the roster. Can Prizehorse keep Arctic off the backboard? Because yANXNZ are some of the best in the world at those backboard double touches. And it's actually something that Rise specifically, but also Archie really struggled with over the course of this event, being able to get up and read and defend those backboard doubles. Even TRK and Falcons, they really struggled. They keep that super high line defensively, and they let up a lot of transition goals. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the difference maker here. Just an offensive deluge from Arctic Gaming. It's going to be a high scoring affair for sure. Shuriken and Cardinal. Vatira and Lostt, number 1 and number 2 in saves per goal allowed. We talked about Lostt and Reysbull being top 3 beforehand in round 1 for the Shuriken team. All 6 players are top 20 in saves per goal allowed. So this is going to be a stingy matchup here. And it's going to come down to who can find their spots. And ultimately, I think that Jack and Cheese still have a ways to go as individual, like solo mechanical players getting strikes. They're a team that like to pass it up, and I just think that Shuriken are going to read those infield passes, and Joreuz and Reysbull especially are excellent as one-on-one like mechanical players. So I'm going to give the edge here to Shuriken. Arctic and Shuriken end up going 3-0 in Swiss. Congratulations to them. All right, let's move down to Reaper versus Evergreen. Stizzy and Diaz, bottom 8 in boost collected per here, which I think is going to be a difference maker. And I think Reapers are just going to simply outpace them. This is a super fast team, like to get up and down. oaly and LJ specifically, great at getting out and transition, and then beast mode as this just like solo, what are you going to do kind of player. Diaz and Stizzy, a lot of fakes offensively. I definitely think that they're going to be able to hang with this team, but I'm going to go 3-1 to Reapers here, who are looking really strong so far. All right, Wolfpack versus Paladin. First killer, closest to the ball all tournament. I think he's going to have a huge series here. And I think he's just going to be able to wear down. He knows Chronic, his former teammate in this exercise. He knows his tendencies defensively. Fiberr, and again, another player who might struggle here. AtomiK as a finisher. I just think that Wolfpack are going to have the edge, despite how strong Zen and Chronic were over the course of this event here. V formation against Dragonfire. Fever and Joyo, both top 10 in assists per game. I think they're going to dice apart this Dragonfire team. Nalpo and Raziers both bottom 15 in saves per, which, at this point, when you're looking at these teams, these are two teams that, like, again, I really kind of struggle to understand what they're going to look like. But I'm going to give the edge to Monkey Moon and Joyo here, who I think are just going to find a way to figure out and dissect this Dragonfire defense. And then finally, in this 1-1, Stallions going up against Division Quest. Lioro, tied for most demos taken per game, which does not fare well against Retals and TORRES. Going to be a real offensive series here. We got Atau versus dralii, the former teammates, but dralii, again, like, he can score, but also doesn't get the credit he deserves as a defender either. Maybe he does, because we all consider him to be the best in the world, but I think that this is going to be a tough series for Lioro, and despite the offensive output, we're going to go 3-2 for Stallions. All right, our O2s. Some teams are going to go out earlier than we want. That's just how it goes here. It's how the cookie crumbles. Sphinx, the only player with 1 assist per game, and despite Banana Head averaging 0.94 goals per game on the number 3 shooting percentage, they're just going to bow out early here. We have Big Yeti, 3-1. Banana Boys do take a game here, an event that they're going to want back, but they had a really tough run here. They run up against Reapers. They see Paladin, and now, this is just a personal favorite here for Big Yeti. I can't have them dropping out this early. I just like this team too much. Call me biased in this completely made-up exercise, but I am, guys. I am. I can't fight it. Saltwater Strikers going up against the 3 Eagles. Cacaw. CRR, number 1 in big and small pad steals per game. Isn't that crazy? They're just going to render this 3 Eagles team toothless here. TORRES and Catalysm, pretty straightforward strikers. I think Daniel's going to be able to read what they're bringing here. And then swiftt. Look, he's going to mature and be back to this stage in the future for these majors. But he kind of overcomplicated it at times here. Was using up a lot of boost to make the plays he was trying to do, something that CJ had called out in one of their series as well, where they were just kind of overcomplicating things, not only as a unit, but swiftt as a player. And I just think that Saltwater here are going to be able to steal so much boost that 3 Eagles are really going to struggle to find high level offensive strikes with momentum. And that's something that Daniel's going to read all day long. 3 Eagles and Banana Boys are going to bow out early here. All right, round 4. This is tough. I hate sending any of these fake teams home. Where are we starting? We are starting up top with Wolfpack Gaming going up against Prizehorse. Look, Falcons were probably favored against Ultimates, but who ended up coming out on top? A 3-0 sweep, And I'm sure Wildcard Gaming were favored against Luminosity. None of those players are even here, but I'm just saying that it's not always as straightforward as you think. And, this Prizehorse team, like Rise and Archie, played together in the FIFA E tournament for Team England, and they kind of struggled. These are just a bunch of excuses for me to say that I think that AtomiK and First Killer are going to come alive in this matchup. And all three of these Prizehorse players went round 5 in Birmingham, so it's going to continue here. A huge upset. Hunter making it into the top 8. First Killer and AtomiK, what can you say? Back to the drawing board here for Prizehorse. Stunning loss, for sure. Stallions. The Stallions going up against Cardinal Gaming here. Retals totally in Jack's head, the duo. But despite that, Cheese has a huge series against his former teammate in Retals. Cheese 3rd in average boost, and apparently Jack 7th in average boost. So they are not going to struggle here to find momentum. TORRES and Retals might overextend trying to go for demos on Vatira. And Jack and Cheese are going to say, you can go for it all day long. They're going to end up 3-2ing the Stallions here. Huge win for Cardinals Gaming. They deserve this spot, the chip on their shoulder, like they know that they should be here. Where are we going next? We're looking for Reapers and V formation in my notes. No top 10 scorers in this matchup, which is crazy. BeastMode and LJ both over a save per goal allowed. This is going to be a war of attrition. But I think Reapers are going to come out on top here. We're going 3-2. V formation finding their way into round 5. All right, dropping down. Paladin against Saltwater. This is probably the toughest matchup of any for me to call, because I came away really impressed by CRR and Sosa. Didn't know if they were going to be able to contribute, but they did. I was really impressed by Complexity despite their losses. We've already shined a light and given our flowers to Luminosity for going 5 here. Based on real results, though, somewhat, Chronic Grand Finals, Zen looked great. Daniel was an excellent defender, but he was one of 2 players to shoot under 10% for the event. It was him and Reysbull. So I think that they might struggle. Saltwater might struggle to score here. And we're going to go 3-2, game 5, overtime. Zen with a huge one here to overcome the Strikers. Vision Quest going up against Big Yeti. We've talked about, I'm probably wearing my Big Yeti Esports jersey for this major, for this hypothetical. Love the merch, whoever they had designing them, great job. But despite that, AtomiK and Kiileerrz both top 7 in shots per game. I just think they're going to overwhelm Big Yeti here. Majicbear and Joreuz top 6 in distance from their teammates. We know that Gen G like to space it out, and Joreuz always kind of picking his spots away from the action there. I think they're going to leave really wide gaps for AtomiK and Kiileerrz to take advantage of. And again, 2 excellent strikers in AtomiK and Kiileerrz. AtomiK led the way in overtime goals for this event. He had 5, more than any other competitor. So I just think that they're going to get the edge here over Big Yeti. 3-2, sending home the Bel Air, hidden favorites here a little earlier than we might want. Evergreen Esports going up against Dragonfire. Stizzy and Diaz, both over a save per game in goals. I think that might neutralize Nowpo's elite scoring. Reysbull's lowest in goals per game for the tournament. And KV1 was not much better if you want to kind of even things out here. But you know what? Evergreen, real surprise. You can see that I have really struggled with sending any teams home here. These are all tough ones to call, as are most of this. And this is a team that got a little bit of buzz on my tweet as well. So maybe I'm wrong, but I really like this Evergreen squad. Round 5, Prizehorse going up against Vision Quest. Look, ultimately, Leoro and Foot had a surprising run, but it ends here. Lowest average boost and the most time at 0 boost for Leoro is going to allow this Prizehorse team to punish. And there's just too much talent over here. Despite Atau lifting a trophy early, we are going to unfortunately send him home here. Leoro, just the difference maker, unfortunately, in a negative way. Um, not necessarily to disparage him. Like, we're talking about the best players in the world here. So for them to make a round 5 with some big wins, Paladin up against Evergreen. Chronic was one of the biggest surprises from all of Birmingham for me, especially in the way that he was able to come alive after ultimates are scoreless in their first 2 games against Vitality in the uppers. Chronic comes alive, has a huge game 3, and a huge series for a team without any top 8 players from Birmingham on the other side here in Evergreen. Diaz, KV1, and Stizzy were unable to make the playoffs. And so we are going to go 32 domination, 3-2. Evergreen bow out a little earlier than they want, but a strong team that'll be back here in the future. And then Stallions going up against V Formation. A lot of history here. You could talk about this matchup a lot beforehand. The casters are going to be really excited. They can talk about dralii versus Monkey Moon. They can talk about TORRES versus Fiberr. But best player in the world here is going to win. Huge result for OCE. TORRES makes a top 8. Retals top 8. dralii, best player in the world, is not going to be denied here. Can't have him bowing out before the playoffs. So let's go down here and take a look at our top 8 teams. Arctic Gaming, Team Shuriken. Wolfpack Gaming, what a shock. Cardinal Gaming, Reaper Esports, Prizehorse GG, Paladin, and the Stallions. Both of our Derby teams making it. And I had put up a tweet a while back about the rate in which teams who win their first round matchup make it to the playoffs. And typically you only have like a team or 2 who lose their first round matchup. And I did not draw that up on purpose, but look at this. Reapers and Stallions, the only 2 teams, or two teams here who lose, who end up making it, which is very impressive. Does our Buckholz show us anything? Man, rough draw for Big Yeti. The -7 Buckholz. You hate to see it. All right. Let's move on to our main event. Why don't we? Flip over to my main event notes. Hopefully this video isn't already over an hour, but who can tell? I'm not going to hop over to OBS just to show you guys, okay? You got to trust me on this. All right. We're going to start out with Arctic Gaming against Cardinal. 2 teams who were looking great in Swiss. Let me give you some stats. I already told you guys a couple of times that I took all of these players on average and then or their results from Birmingham and then averaged them over. So like I took ExoTiiK's output, AtomiK's output, and yANXNZ's output for their individual teams, and then I averaged them out. This Arctic Gaming squad, top 3 in goals, number 1 in assists per game, 4th in shots per game, elite offense, but they were number 1 in demos taken, and the Cardinals were 4th in demos inflicted. Can they create enough space to score? Ultimately, I think no. 4-2, like a big opportunity for him here. AtomiK as well, both major playoff rookies, but I'm going to give the edge to ExoTiiK and Yan, who have been there, done that, despite Vatira and AppJack doing the same. All right, Shuriken versus Wolfpack. Huge result for Wolfpack, making the upper quarterfinals. Hunter, how have you done it, man? It's mostly because First Killer and AtomiK looked excellent, especially First Killer. Like, what an event for Ultimates. I was so surprised by his leadership and his way that he engaged with his teammates after they would win, getting up. Big hugs for Chronic, big hugs for Sad Jr. and Chronic. Really, really impressed by him. But Wolfpack, 16th in shots per game, and Shuriken are nearly equal in saves per goals allowed as Wolfpack are on overall shots. I just don't think that they're going to be able to break through. Hunter's going to get abused on the goal line by fakes here, and we are going to go 4-2. Shuriken and Arctic Gaming, our 3-0 teams, both moving into the semifinals, looking really strong here. All right, lower round ones. Let's eliminate some excellent teams. Why don't we? Reapers versus Stallions. What a matchup. You know, you got to draw the line somewhere. And when I drew this up beforehand, this was a huge event for Reapers Gaming, excuse me, who ended up making the grand finals. But I slept on it and I looked back and, you know, this has to be a little bit based on Birmingham results, right? Despite LJ making the grand finals, BeastMode had a poor event by his standards. NRG could not get the lid off of the net. Nearly last, tied with Chiefs almost in goals per game, despite having an elite defense. And, you know, dralii, number 1 in goals per game at 1.12. LJ lowest in assists in Birmingham. oaly, one of 6 players below 50% goal participation. So you know what? We're going to go... Just kidding, guys. It's dralii. It's dralii. Are you upset by the result? Me too, a little bit. If I looked at this again later, we might go a different direction. But before we stick on it for too long, let's just move on, why don't we? And talk about PALADIN versus Prizehorse GG. You know, at some point it just comes down to experience. You know, I added up the total LAN games played for both of these rosters. Prizehorse, 662 LAN games. It helps that Rise is number 1. And TRK is number 2. PALADIN, 353 LAN games. Nearly double the LAN experience. And I think that that is going to bear itself out here. Fiberr, one of our only 54 LAN games played. It's a big spot for him. And Prizehorse, excuse me, really starting to find their momentum here and are going to ultimately get the win over PALADIN. And you know, Zen, like, Vitality go up 2-0 in both of those matchups in their upper quarters and their lowers against Furia and Ultimates, and then they go up 2-0 and then they end up losing. So, you know, some struggles there. Chronic ends up making the grand finals, of course, but I think this Prizehorse team just has a ton of talent. And by the way, Chronic 3rd in LAN games played, barely inching out Archie. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Cardinal Gaming versus the Stallions. Look, Stallions have had an excellent event. Jack and Cheese, both top 12 in big steals, are going to make it tough for the Stallions team to break out and, you know, have enough boost to get Supersonic to find those demos. I think this is going to be a huge result for Cheese, vindication for Jack. You know, he is coming back to the form that he found in his Copenhagen win. Stallions got to work on their defense as they head towards Raleigh here. We're going to give the edge to Cardinal despite dralii having such an overwhelming performance. Retals and TORRES are going to not be enough in a physical way to impact Cardinal, who are moving on to our semifinals here. And then down below, Prizehorse going up against the Wolfpack. Despite a top 4 from First Killer and AtomiK, Wolfpack's low shot total with Hunter being last in goals for the event. Well, he actually barely beat out Reysbull, but he had the least shot attempts. So I don't know. AtomiK 9th lowest isn't helping. And they're just going to be swarmed by Prizehorse here. Top 6 for Hunter is huge, especially after he made the playoffs in EWC in the offseason with Kaka and Joreuz. Top 6 is as high as a Hunter team can go. Dominant win here by Prizehorse, who, you know, they're starting to ramp up here and look really good. And that makes our semifinals, Team Shuriken versus Cardinal Gaming, Arctic Gaming versus Prizehorse. Where are we going to go, guys? I'm excited too. Let's hop over to the last page of my notes in our Birmingham randomizer. I just want to pause and say we've had a lot of fun, haven't we? All right, let's get to the semifinals. Shuriken versus Cardinal Gaming. Vatira, a huge series for Cardinal here. He's doing everything. This team, great communication. You know, the leadership from Jack and Vatira is something that I've always been a huge fan of. Cheese is this like dogged and determined, locked in player. But I think the difference maker here is going to be, again, the fact that Cheese and Jack struggled as I hit my mic, excuse me, as independent offensive, you know, solo talents. And I think that that's what you need to break down this stalwart defense, this juggernaut of a defense here in Team Shuriken. And despite incredible efforts by Vatira, we're going to go 4-3 to Shuriken here, bowing out a little bit earlier than we would want. But again, huge result for Cheese, making it all the way to a semifinals. And Vatira continues to run up against, you know, those top 4 finishes. But again, like, anybody who makes it to Championship Sunday has a shot. So can't be too upset if you're Cardinal Gaming. Huge result for you there, making a top 4 against the best defensive team in the world. And then AtomiK going up against Prizehorse. This is a rematch from Swiss. And what did we see from Swiss, guys? Oftentimes, if you lose in Swiss, you might come back and win in the playoffs. But AtomiK can just hurt you so many ways offensively. I think they're going to outgun, Prizehorse here. They're going to leave too many gaps in transition. And a huge series from ExoTiiK, who does it all on both ends, looking like an MVP form that he had found from the World Championship before. Hey, we went to Game 7 in both, though. Like, these were great series, you know? Really, really impressive. Even a team like Stallions, really, really impressed. And, you know, this upper side of the bracket here, all you know, Game 7s. And I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret here. When I had drawn this up the first time, literally every main event matchup was a best of 7, and I was like, all right, like, tone it down. Like, not all of these are gonna go 7. So I had some bigger wins here by Prizehorse, who I think are a great team, even though they're only making it to a semifinals here. And then, would you look at that? They both went 3-0 in playoffs, and we're here again. I told you guys it was partially going to be who I favored, and I just love both of these rosters. I think the weakest player here, it's a decision between Reysbull and AtomiK, and that's saying a lot because this is the grand finals. So, like, shout out to all of these players being able to make it here. Really back and forth. It's going to be 4-3. Is it going to go this way or is it going to go this way? Well, I'll let you guys know that Yan finally lifts the trophy that he's yearned for so long. AtomiK. Yan and AtomiK, 2 of 4 players in the top 10 for tally. Look at me. I'm really digging into the stats for you guys. Yan and AtomiK, 2 of 4 players in the top 10 for tally with more total assists than goals. So a lot of players like Naupo, who's up in the top 10 for tally, way more goals than assists. But Yan and AtomiK both moving the ball, moving the rock super well, and they're going to help ExoTiiK repeat as MVP that he did from last season's World Championship. Congratulations to AtomiK Gaming, barely breaking down the Team Shuriken defense. You got to be proud of yourself if you're Shuriken. Lostt and Joreuz. Both had pretty good form, but Falcons underperformed a little bit. Complexity exited a little bit earlier in the tournament than they would have wanted. And despite Vitality bowing out, Twisted Minds bowing out, and Furia, again, making that top 4, I felt like they would just be the more cohesive team here. And I feel like their offensive output, and again, like, you know, no stiffs on the defensive end for AtomiK here. I feel like that is going to outweigh the offensive output from Shuriken here. Congratulations to ExoTiiK, AtomiK. Huge result for AtomiK, who one of the best strikers in Europe for a really long time. But golf clap to AtomiK Gaming. ExoTiiK, another MVP. Yan lifts his trophy. guys, I had a ton of fun doing this exercise. If you're still here hanging out, again, shout out to Cody on Twitter for helping me make all of this happen. I'm going to put a copy of this randomizer in the description below so you can do your own. And please either let me know in the comments below who your favorite team would be for this this style here, and share with me on Twitter if you want a copy of what your playoff situation looks like. Would love to see who you guys have winning this. Had a ton of fun doing this. Again, thanks for the Birmingham Major for giving us like so much fun and engaging content to talk about after the event here. Better late than never, but those pesky sicknesses, guys. If you would like more content like this, we're pumping out a ton of great interviews onto the YouTube and fun little exercises like this. So subscribe if you want more. Follow me on Twitter if you want more engagement with stuff like this. And until next time, guys, take it easy.